What is love? This subject, I would say, deserves um, special attention because it's the word that's going to consume human life forever. And you can sort of associate different types of love, I guess. You can love ice cream, I suppose, and you can love your friends, and you can love your family, you know, your brothers and sisters, and your mom and your dad. But there is one type of love in particular that is the true flame of human existence, and that is, of course, romantic love. That is a situation where two former strangers seem to be two pieces of the same thing. They seem to come together in a way that is very different from the rest of everything else. Those connections that I talked about in the last video, those are easy come, easy go, and compared to this romantic love, they are not even in the same stratosphere. They're not the same thing at all. And when it comes to romantic love, that's, at least in my experience and my point of view, there is that, and then there is no second, there's no third, there's no set of options, there's no multitudes, there's no this person and then the next. It is a situation of very directly this one person for whom you love in a way that is sufficient to truly capture the word. And you don't really know who that's going to be. You don't know what that's going to look like. You have no, there's billions of people on Earth. And I promise you, if you meet this person and fall in love with this person, you will absolutely know. And you will discover that it completely changes the landscape of people, you know. And it really is kind of the ultimate, like, human tunnel, I guess, if you want to describe it that way. It's not even enough to say you're attached, you know. And this is coming from somebody who's relatively detached, who is at least capable of significant detachment, you know. Who is aware of the beautiful attachment of the world and the beautiful detachment of the world, you know. Who's able to see the validity of both of those states. And when it comes to meaning and storytelling and significance in terms of what a person experiences on a day-to-day basis, nothing is going to be anything close to this romantic love. It is the single thing that will ignite day after day after day. And like I said, you don't know what that's going to look like necessarily. It's like the associated romanticized version of the romantic is, of course, the stereotypical story of two people meet and suddenly this thing happens and you're presented with a fork in the road, and there's some issue or something that sort of calls into question this whole love thing, and in the end it ends up resolved, and you know, maybe you go through a bit more of a tribulation or something like that in the story, but then it's the sunset, and you walk off into the sunset and all's well, and that's kind of where it ends. You know, you're safe to assume that all's well. You know, maybe they set up a cabin somewhere, you know, maybe they found a beautiful home, and you know, it's safe to assume that they're together forever. And that's that. But in real life, it is kind of like that. Let's be honest. It is kind of like that, except it's not so condensed into like an hour and a half, you know? And from the male point of view, especially, because it's different for men and women. Like, let's be honest, it is. Like, a woman in love versus a man in love are two different things. Like, what a woman does when she is utterly and madly in love with somebody, and what a man does when he is utterly and madly in love with somebody are two different sides of the same coin. And for some people, like, it's utterly terrifying, you know. I mean, especially if you're the sort of person who likes being alone. Like, what if you like being alone? What if you lived your whole life relatively unattached, you know, and you have found these connections and these interesting people, and, you know, you've had these experiences and stuff, and, you know, but at the same time, there's a massive part of you that is deeply romantic, who knows about this love thing, like we all do. Like, before somebody falls in love with somebody, obviously, there's this theoretical thing that we have that imagines what such a thing is actually like, you know, and it can come in the form of a sensation, but until it actually arrives, like, you know, there's nothing that can actually prepare you for that, because it's actually, you know, it can be a terrifying thing to somebody to realize that they're this attached to somebody, you know, and that is like, it's almost too understandable. It's almost too easy to understand, you know. It's like, of course, especially like this day and age, when we kind of have the option to not indulge it so much, maybe. You know, we kind of have the option to postpone these things, or even run away from them. But that's the strange thing about love, is that it doesn't just stop, you know. And from the male point of view, from my point of view, if I do love you, then I'm not gonna stop loving you. You know, if you happen to be the person that I love, you know, I'm not just gonna stop, and I'm going to continue to try to bring you into my world. And that's just the way it is, you know. And it's the strangest thing, because, like I've said in the past, there are plenty of beautiful people, you know. There are plenty of interesting people. And that's kind of the advice that people give each other. You know, people say, like, there are plenty of fish in the sea. And there are. But when it comes to love, you'll find that other people are distractions. You know, they will distract you. But when the dust settles, you'll still find yourself in love with the person that you love. And I talk about people in love not being together because that, more often than not, is the situation. Like, people have to know, like, say you suspect that you're in love, you know, say you know, say it's new to you, and you have a strong suspicion. What are you gonna do? You just gonna go head first into that? What if, you know, they're very convincing, and they don't actually mean it? You know, what if the things that they're saying to you, they actually say to a lot of people? What if you're just another one? You know, what if you're just another notch on the old belt, so to speak? And especially from the female point of view, this is probably the most terrifying thought, because the last thing that you're going to want is some dude very convincingly saying that he loves you, who makes you love him, who ends up being just another dude pretending, who you actually end up believing in, you know, who you actually, you give away a piece of yourself to. And what are you going to do when it turns out that it's false? Like, how are you even supposed to live after that shit? You know, like, people play these games with each other, man. Like, it happens every day, all the time. And underneath the surface, this is the most, what's even the right word? This is the most tragic or sad, unspoken circumstance between people. It is this thing playing out, because it plays out all the time, over and over. So from the female point of view, how are you supposed to know? Like, what if you've had certain life experiences? What if what if you've had life experience so far, especially dealing with men, that has completely taken away all your faith? What if you actually kind of hate men, to be honest? What if you actively dislike them because of your experiences with them so far? Just as a general thing, what are you supposed to do when you fall in love? Are you just gonna fall head first and just allow that to happen? Of course not. And that's actually completely understandable, because, like I said, it's really like the last straw, I would say, for somebody, to believe that they had found this thing, this like once in a lifetime, like a truly one time thing. Two people in love, they are two parts of the same thing. They are literally cut from the same thing. They are of the same essence. They are two parts that, more than anything, want to be reunited. And we've told this story of love so many times, and we've heard so many stories, and we've had so many experiences, that surrounding this subject, there are so many different words and stories. There are just so many different things surrounding this particular thing that makes it one of the most dense subjects that a human can even talk about, really. And really, from the male point of view, I would ask you that. Like, what's a woman supposed to do? If you're not in love with somebody, like, genuinely, like, you shouldn't be telling them that. You shouldn't tell anybody that you love them unless you actually do. And you should actually know what that means before you say it. Because you can't just go out there. Like, imagine your daughter in that situation. Who would you want your daughter to end up with, Ask yourself that shit too, because it's kind of cliche, but it's true, And from the male point of view as well, if you actually do love somebody, like, you're going to continue to love them no matter what happens. And love carries certain characteristics. There are certain things about it that bind you together in such a way that makes you both recognize what's happening. And there's a reason so many stories have been written about it. There's a reason it needs to be a component in any good story. There's a reason why it utterly melts your chest to read about this truest of loves. And we're becoming more and more individual, too. There's less and less copies of people, and you might be able to argue that. You might say that there's more copies of people because of social media. But I think it has both effects strengthening. I think it strengthens the ability to make copies of a person, but it also strengthens the ability to make individuals, because the more different sorts of emulatable people who broadcast themselves, and the more of these characteristics that are taken on by other people, the more these characteristics blend together in specific human beings in their own specific way and create new individual things. It's like adding more flavors and more elements and more colors into the pot and just continuously stirring it, And it casts across the entire population. So love in that situation, it's like before we became hyperconnected, it was still highly exclusive and highly individual. But now, it's even more, I mean, how much can you actually love somebody? Ask yourself that, man. Like, how much can you love somebody? And it's going to go back to that question that I once asked that I associated to love. Will I suffer for you? That's not the only thing, but it is within the pantheon of things that involves love. I'm not going to suffer for you if I don't love you. I'm just not. I mean, maybe a little, I have decency and common courtesy, and I can be polite. I can be a dick too. It just depends. But suffering, like true human suffering, I'm not going to do that for you unless I love you. If I love you, I will endure anything for you. Simply put, there's nothing else than that. There's no other way. And it's like I said, you don't know who you're going to fall in love with. Those connections of your past cannot prepare you for what happens when you are bound to somebody in that way, They become just parts of your past, parts of what you did. And nothing is more poetic. You don't know the story that is unfolding while you're in love. While you're in love, a different sort of story is unfolding. A different sort of high gravity, high magnitude series of events are unfolding that you can only really see in retrospect. Like, you don't even really know while it's happening, but when you look back, you end up like, my God, like this thing has been happening. And it just completely changes the density of your experience. Like, really ask yourself that, man. Like, how much are you capable of loving another human being genuinely? Do you even see that as theoretically possible for yourself, where you would actually suffer for somebody else, and not just for a little while, like endure the great sufferings of life for somebody? And one of the first things that probably crosses people's minds is like, what if you look like a fool? What if that happens? Because that's an inherent element of attachment. People like to be individuals. People like to be alone. We have the ability to be so alone today. And that's cool. That's fine. And I said in the last video, I could become a philosopher or happily married. And if I had to choose, if I had the ability to choose between this love and being alone, I'm always going to choose this love. There's no comparison. Of course not. I would always choose A in that scenario. And to be honest, I'm probably the sort of person that could do both, if I'm being fully honest with you, because I'm I'm a bit of a magic man. I'm convinced that that song was actually about me. But, yeah. And anybody who finds themselves in that situation, any one of you, anybody who hears this, if you do fall in love with somebody, you're always going to pick that over being alone, you know? And you're going to suffer. And you're going to find out what it means to be genuinely connected to somebody, not just, you know, connecting for a night. Even if it's a 20-year on-off relationship with somebody, that kind of connection, if it vanished today and you never saw that person again, you wouldn't give a fuck. I wouldn't give a fuck, you know? It's not even the same thing. And I felt the need, after making a video about connection, to make one about love too. Because I never want to conflate those two things. Love does involve connection, but not every connection is love. There's only one connection that's love. And if you're not a romantic before you fall in love with somebody, you will become one. But some of us happen to be romantics before that. Some of us came that way. And love only amplifies it, you know. And love will make you things that you never thought that you would be. It can make you desperate. Like, do you know what it's like to miss somebody that you love, you know? To physically not be near somebody that you love? Like, some of you, when you hear that, you instantly know what I'm talking about, you know? And for others, you don't, you know? You don't. Because it's different. It's not the same as missing a friend or even a family member. You know, it's like missing a part of yourself. And, you know, you're not quite right without that. And it's going to find itself on you or in you in some way. And it's the very definition of missing somebody. It's the very definition of desperately needing them. Like, can you imagine that as well? Can you imagine in this world of more and more individuation, desperately needing somebody? You know, you're almost, in a way, at the mercy of another person. And people who are in love realize this too along the way. That's why it has to involve the deepest sort of trust. It has to involve a circumstance where you're completely aware that hurting you means hurting me, and hurting me means hurting you. That love ends up being that. You can't just you end up not being able to just treat each other like anybody else, you know, even in small ways, you know. And it's like I said, this thing goes deeper than anything else. It's the deepest possible bond that two humans can have. And it is the drama of life in the deepest sense. But when I use the word drama, I don't mean it as most people mean it, with that negative association. I just mean high density events, like high magnitude, extremely important events that feel that way in real time and have that resonance in recollection. Like, some people can get married multiple times and find out that those people were just connections that they mistook for love. You see, the problem with wanting to get married before you meet somebody that you want to marry is that you're going to mistake connections for love. And then later on in life, you're going to fall in love with the person that you exactly should have been with the entire time. And you probably would have been better off by yourself. And then meeting that person and marrying them later on. And that's the problem. It's especially when you're a person, let's say, who's wealthy maybe, or who's quite famous, quite renowned, like an actor. Because when you're an actor, you're famous, you're in a position where more people know your name. There's more reasons to and opportunities to connect with you. People can connect with you through watching one of your movies. People, you simply expose yourself to more and more of these millions of people that you could very easily, pleasantly spend time with and connect with just fine. And you might mistake that for love. You might mistake that for somebody that you would actually suffer for. And it leads to incalculable issues, and it leads to confusion, and it leads to you wondering if you can even trust your own senses, your own internal barometer with these things. And then later, when you finally genuinely fall in love with somebody, the person you're supposed to be with, it's all so easy, And when I say it's all so easy, I don't necessarily mean easy. I mean, the love part is easy. The fact of its existence is easy. There's no confusion about what this is. And I've always more or less been that sort of person, When those connections were happening in the past, I was aware that this wasn't the love of my life. I was aware that this wasn't that, because I didn't feel it. And I wasn't going to lie to myself. I wasn't going to try to get married back then and force something and put myself in that position, because it's like I said too, the worst thing I can imagine is marrying somebody you don't love. Somebody that you mistook for love. But it was just a connection because you didn't know what love was yet. And some people might be completely against this notion, and that's fine, Some people get married. Some people want to get married and marry that connection and build a life around it and do just fine. And, but still, they don't have that part of them satiated deep within. That raging inferno is never fully satiated. That other human being on this planet that they are truly capable of loving is out there, but you've put yourself in a different position. You've taken a different path for whatever reason, and that's fine. If you can live with that, then you can live with that. But not myself, And many people can't. My parents were lucky. My parents, I've told this story. It's a simple story. My parents, as soon as they saw each other, they knew, And my mom was very, very loosely interested, I guess, in like 3 dudes, 3 men in high school. And she just saw my dad saw her, and that was it. They knew right then and there, this is my husband and this is my wife. Like they knew that through and through. And that's exactly what happened, and they've been married ever since. And that's how it is. That's exactly how it is. And had my mom married one of those other guys who were some connection, I mean, dude, I couldn't even fathom that for her. It would have been a completely alternate life. I would be different. My brothers, my sister would be different. They probably would have ended up divorced or some other terrible catastrophe. But no, she knew, and because of the person she was and because of the person he was, they were able to immediately go with it, and that was that. But that's not how it is for everybody, Not everybody has such a go at it. And they were actually benefited by the fact that they physically saw each other right then and there like that. There was no buffer. There was no delay, really. But again, that's not how it happens for everybody. The existence of love is like the existence of this sudden inferno in a very, very cold place. Suddenly the cold is removed in this one spot where these two entities come together. And the whole world is cold compared to that, man. Like, it genuinely is. Day to day, every day, it's cold compared to what you found with this one other person. And the peripheral characteristics of yourself, those flaws, those things, maybe you're hard to love. Maybe you're hard, to love. Maybe you don't have a high opinion of yourself. Maybe you feel like you don't even deserve love, or to be loved, or to be able to love. Even if that is the case, you are going to be loved by the person who loves you. They're going to love you for the rest of their life, and they're never going to forget about you. And they're always going to be after you. They're always going to be trying to get you as close as they can possibly get you, for as long as they can possibly have you. And we are these energies, we are these entities. We are these emissions of a specific energy. If I were gone tomorrow, my specific vibration or way of life or energy would be no more. The planet would not have it anymore. And that is the same for every single one of us. Your particular emission, your particular going, would be gone. And love is the bringing together of these two, for two individuals. And something radically different happens. It is like I said, it's like an inferno in a cold place. Everything feels cold next to it, And that has been our situation for some time. I would say it's always been our situation. And it always will be.